Welcome back to DaaamnDaddy.wordpress.com. I am going to start off with an apology to those of you who have been keeping up with this blog. I have not posted in a couple weeks because my laptop crashed, and being the broke college graduate that I am, I could not afford to get it fixed at the time, and it took me a minute to put up the funds to get a new laptop. But with that being said, I want to continue on with the series on domestic violence that I started with, finish that out today, and then move forward. So now that the apologies out of the way, I want to update you all on the situation that I first shared in the very first post addressing domestic violence about a friend of mine. And I just want to say that I've done so much research, and if you follow me at DaaamnDaddy on Instagram, DaaamnDaddy, you'll see lots of different facts. I did one every day during the month of October, so that's 31 different facts plus links to websites where I received that information and places you can follow up and do your own research. But back to my point, I was talking about a friend of mine, and that particular friend I shared was in an abusive relationship with the father of her child. And in my research, I discovered that only 34% of people who are injured by intimate partners receive medical care for their injuries. That's it. 34% of people who are injured in intimate partner violence receive medical attention for their injuries. So if there were 100 people who were bruised and battered by a partner, only 34 of them went to the doctor or the hospital and received medical attention for those injuries. And for those of you who watched all of the videos, you know that in the second one I shared the story of a woman who was beaten blind by the father of her children. And with that being said, my friend was put in a situation where she was forced to have surgery because the doctors told her that she too could lose the use of an eye if she didn't receive a surgery, not just medical attention, but whole entire surgery for a young person with a child because they were in an abusive relationship. So with that being said, please, I am not doing this solely for more attention, more likes, more views on my blog. Like, I really do care about people receiving attention and seeking assistance and an escape route from situations that are abusive to them. Moving forward, another fact, because that particular friend of mine had to reach out to some family members that she hadn't spoken to in a while. Nobody had heard from her in a while. I hadn't heard from her. The people who keep in contact with me were like, hey, have you heard from her? I'm like, hey, have y'all heard from her? No one had heard from her for months. And she showed up at a relative's house with her child. And with that being said, the second fact I want to share is that a study of intimate partner violence, and please excuse my turned head, I'm just reading from my notes, so I don't want to misquote any of these organizations. I want to give you actual facts. A study of intimate partner homicides found that 20% of victims were not the intimate partners themselves, but family members, friends, neighbors, persons who intervened, law enforcement responders, or bystanders. So that same particular friend, her dad decided to step in on one occasion, and the father of her child thought it was okay for him to physically assault her father. So when I saw that fact, that was something that, was one of the first things on my mind, thinking about the time that I had been there to step in. And, what could have happened to her dad, what could have happened to any of her family members that she reached out to. And one of the things she shared with me one time was that she did not tell her father on the previous occasions that things had happened because she didn't want to get him involved. And for me, I couldn't really fathom that. I'm like, I wish I could just call my father up and be like, hey, this person's harming me. But learning that fact, that could be a barrier for people seeking the assistance of their loved ones, because they don't want anything bad to happen to them. They're not thinking about this person can help me get out of this situation. They're thinking that I'm bringing that person into my mess and my harm's way. And I don't say mess to call it that for other people, but I do know from listening to victims of domestic violence that that's the language they use. That's how they view themselves. It's their problem. They need to fix it, and they have a hard time asking for help for that reason. So I'm going to continue to press forward because I like to talk, and this could go on all night. But the next fact is that the effects of the development of children. So I shared on my Instagram post the other day a brief snippet of my next post for dealing with daddy issues. It reflects my younger cousin. And this particular cousin is very close to me, but I haven't seen him in a few years. And that's because he's in a juvenile detention center, and a series of events led him to be there. So I met this child when they were about a year old, and they instantly became like family. Their acting stepfather was like a family member to myself. He was like an extra uncle to me, and he was great with kids during my childhood. However, something about this young man's existence triggered something negative in that adult. A mean-spirited side of him that I had never experienced became more prevalent and more present in this man as he became the acting father for this child as well as his older sister. The stepfather in that situation went on to have 3 biological children with their mother, and there was like a division. You know, these my kids, those your kids. Instead of, you know, these are my stepkids and these are our kids all together. It was like negative energy in that direction towards those children. I remember even witnessing him throw this child up a flight of steps one time, because trying to get him to go up to bed. And that's when it was real to me. Like, you know, kids will tell you things and you have to kind of decipher what's real and what's imaginary, what's, you know, hyperbole, because they need attention. But I saw that with my own 2 eyes, and I was shocked, and still shocked all these years later, that particular individual who was such a positive person and great with children during my childhood could ever treat someone's child that way, especially a child entrusted in their care and who has adopted you as their father figure. That they've been together for at least a decade by the time I saw what I saw. He was a curious kid. My mom called him her little Steven Spielberg. He told like the best stories. Like, you know, one day I'm going to have to get him on my blog to tell you about this ninja drug dealer story that happened. And then we verified that it actually happened. It was like, wait, what? This is weird. But, you know, we always thought that he was going to go on to be some type of movie director, playwright, or something of that level, because he was very engaging in the stories that he told. So it says that children who witness violence may be more aggressive and fight more often, and growing up with violence affects a child's basic drive to explore the world. Natural curiosity is thwarted, and children may be less willing to try new things. So I jokingly thought about like, oh, the basic dudes at home, they be like, I was born here, I was raised here, and I'm going to die here and don't ever want to experience anything else. You know, maybe they witnessed some traumatic events and some domestic violence in their lives, and like they don't want to explore any place outside of their limits because they view what they know as safe. I've learned how to navigate the dangers of this particular area, and I don't want to learn how to navigate the dangers of anywhere else. But I just want people to keep that in mind, because this site is about daddy issues, and most certainly mine, because I try not to speak on other people's experiences. But in dealing with daddy issues, and damn daddy, like, you know, you really have to take into account that it's not just emotional issues and girls being promiscuous that are the effects of having damaged father-child relationships. Sometimes the effects are much larger. Like, people don't realize how early on children can remember the effects of domestic violence. So one of the facts that I shared on my Instagram account in relation to children and domestic violence had to do with myths. So this particular one is attached to this photo of me on my blog, my Instagram, DaaamnDaddy, and it says, myth: young children will not remember the violence they have witnessed. Fact: children do not forget what they have witnessed. Adults hope that if the violence is not talked about, the children's memories of the event will disappear. However, young children demonstrate a remarkable capacity for recalling traumatic events. Children's vivid accounts of violent events stand in contrast to parents' reports that their children did not see the violence or were unaware of it. So, I also talked about my sister's dad and an experience where he called the cops on my mom when she had a house full of children. So the same younger cousin I was talking about a moment ago was there that night, and his sister and my little sister, and they were younger than me. I was probably about 14, so they were like 4, 6, and 8 years old, maybe a little bit older. But he remembers that night, and he talks about it often, and that's something that's embarrassing for my mother, having to be questioned by police officers or arrested in the presence of children for an adult circumstance. And people don't think about that sometimes. I'm not saying that he was wrong to call the cops. Like, I don't know his reasoning behind calling the cops that night. I know how I perceived it, and I won't speak on that because I don't know all the facts in that situation. But things like that are traumatizing to children, and people fail to realize that. When you are being spiteful towards an adult, when you are acting in your own right and calling the cops for your protection as an adult from another adult, those things have an effect on children. Children remember those things, they internalize them, and it affects how they move on in their daily lives. So with that being said, I'm going to post the links to the websites that I got these facts from below. But I do want people to keep in mind that Domestic Violence Awareness Month might be over, but that doesn't mean you need to stop learning about it and educating yourself about it, and that doesn't mean you need to stop supporting your friends. Like, continue to be there for people as best you can. If somebody is not ready to open up to you, allow them to have space. If somebody is not willing to make a police report, do your research on how you can file police reports as a witness to violence if the person who was harmed themselves is afraid to or not ready to press charges on the person abusing them. Do your research on, what ways you can be there to support someone other than getting the authorities involved. I had some neighbors get in an argument a few weeks ago, and they was loud. They were about 2 flights up, and I didn't know what to do. But I did call the cops because I didn't want someone's death to be on my hands. They was, threatening each other. The gentleman said, "Let me leave before I hurt you." I heard those words and said, "Okay, well, I won't have to call the cops because he's not all the way crazy." He acknowledged that it's time for him to go. And she said something else that triggered him, and I heard something that sounded like somebody coming down the steps, like thrown down the steps. And I did hear a child's presence. I said, okay, you have to step in here. But just, continue to do your research, ask the questions that need to be asked, and then pay attention to people. Because with my particular friend, I feel like she said things to me, jokingly using her child's voice, like, "Oh, you're going to go stay with her for a while." And I'm thinking selfishly, like, girl, I can't, haha, cute. I'm going to keep her for tonight. But I live 3 hours away and I can't keep your baby. And then when I learned what was really going on, I'm like, she was trying to help me know that she needed me to take her baby so she could leave. Like, I missed it. I missed the opportunity to help her get out of that situation because I wasn't listening or seeing between the lines of what she was really talking about. So I won't hold you all any further. Please visit dealingwithDaddyissues.wordpress.com. Visit my Instagram page, DaaamnDaddy, DaaamnDaddy, on Instagram. And follow me on Periscope.